They told me it couldn't be done. They said the system was too broken, too rigged, too deep. But what they didn't know, what they never understood, is that when you operate from truth, not emotion, when you walk into the room with clarity, confidence, and no attachment to their applause, you dominate. You change everything. You don't just play the game, you become the game. Let me tell you something. For years, this country was making the worst trade deals anyone has ever seen. They were pathetic, embarrassing. We were getting robbed, folks. I'm not just talking about a little unfairness. I'm talking about total surrender. These were deals designed not for strength, but for weakness. And who was behind it? Who signed it? Who looked the other way while our jobs left, our factories closed, and our pride was shipped overseas? Barack Obama. That's who. He gave away your voice, your labor, your dignity. For what? A handshake in a fancy room? A Nobel Peace Prize for doing absolutely nothing? He negotiated from a place of need. I don't negotiate from need. I negotiate from power. Because I don't care if the media loves me. I don't need to be liked by foreign leaders. I don't sit at the table begging. I sit knowing I'm the prize. And here's what the world needs to understand. You don't make great deals when you're emotionally invested in being accepted. You make great deals when you know who you are, when you're detached from their fake praise, their empty promises, their desperate attempts to pull you into their weakness. And you say, no, not today. I watched Obama walk into the White House and give it all away. The man loved the applause more than the results. He bowed. I don't bow. He apologized. I don't apologize for being strong. He talked about globalism. I talk about America. I talk about winning. And I know some of you out there feel that you're tired of being emotionally manipulated, spiritually drained, told to feel guilty for wanting your country to be strong. You're not wrong. You were made for strength. You were made for purpose. You were made to stand in rooms, not begging for respect, but commanding it. Because when you detach emotionally from what they think, you gain clarity. You see through the fog. You don't get baited by their traps. You don't fold under pressure. You hold, you wait, and then you strike. That's what power is. That's what real leadership looks like. And I didn't learn that from books. I learned it by doing. In the boardroom, in the battlefield of politics, in the trenches where the elites never go. They told me I should smile more. They said I should tone it down, that I should be more presidential. But what they meant was be more like Obama, be softer, be weaker, be controllable. I said, absolutely not. You don't save a nation by making friends with failure. You don't build a future by pleasing the past. You rise when you detach from their games emotionally, spiritually, strategically. And when you do, you become unstoppable. When you're not emotionally tied to outcomes, you negotiate from strength. Most people walk into rooms carrying the weight of needing approval, needing validation, needing to be accepted. That's weakness. That's what makes you fold. That's what makes you give up what should never be given. The second you become attached to how the other side feels about you, you've already lost. You're no longer making decisions based on truth. You're making them based on fear. And fear leads to compromise, to hesitation, to making deals that betray your values, just so you can feel safe. But when you walk in emotionally detached, you hold the cards, not because you're cold, but because you're clear. You're not there to make friends. You're there to win. They don't teach this in schools. They certainly didn't teach it to Obama. He wanted people to like him. He thought that smiling and nodding and apologizing would earn him favor. What he didn't realize is the world doesn't respect desperation. The world respects dominance, clarity, presence, and presence doesn't come from yelling. It comes from detachment. When you can look a foreign leader in the eye and say, we don't need this deal, you do, that's when you start winning. Detachment isn't about not caring. It's about not needing. When you're full inside, when you're rooted in your identity, your values, your vision, you don't chase approval. You don't fear rejection. You become immune to manipulation. People can smell that kind of power, and that's when everything shifts. You stop reacting, you start shaping, you stop begging, you start commanding. That's how real deals get made, not with feelings, but with fearless clarity. The kind of clarity that changes nations. Real leaders don't chase popularity, they chase purpose. Popularity is cheap, It shifts with the wind, flips with the poles, disappears the moment you stop feeding it. But purpose, that's unshakable. That's rooted in something eternal. When you're driven by purpose, you make decisions that last, not decisions that trend. And the truth is, most of the world is addicted to being liked. Politicians walk into rooms checking the temperature, waiting to be told what's acceptable. That's not leadership. That's performance. That's weakness in a suit. Purpose doesn't care if you get invited to the dinner party. It doesn't care if the media spins your words. It doesn't care if global elites look down their nose at you. Purpose says, I know where I'm going. I know what I was sent to do. And I'm not moving for applause, for headlines, or for approval ratings. That's how real change happens. You think our founders were popular? You think Lincoln was loved while saving the Union? You think standing against a broken system makes you everybody's favorite? No. It makes you dangerous. It makes you powerful. It makes you necessary. Obama wanted to be liked. That's why he apologized, why he bowed, why he made deals that weakened us. He wanted the world's approval more than he wanted America's greatness. And that's the problem. When you put popularity before purpose, you sell out, you back down, you blend in. But when you're anchored in purpose, you're willing to be hated for the right reasons. You're willing to stand alone because you know you weren't called to be liked. You were called to lead. And leaders don't follow the crowd. They build the future whether the crowd likes it or not. Weak deals come from weak minds. That's the truth no one wants to say out loud. When a leader is unclear, unsure, or desperate to be accepted, they give away everything. They don't even realize it's happening. They smile, they shake hands, they sign the papers, and they think they've won something. But what they've really done is lose without even knowing it. You can't make strong deals with a fragile mindset. You can't defend your people if you can't stand firm without trembling. A deal reflects the soul of the one making it. And if the soul is weak, the deal will be weaker. Look at what happened under Obama. Trade agreements that made no sense. The U.S. was getting nothing while giving away everything. Access, jobs, power. You know why? Because there was no spine, no strength, no understanding of leverage, of timing, of positioning. They negotiated from a place of emotion and guilt instead of strategy and strength. That's not leadership. That's surrender with a smile. But when your mind is strong, when you're grounded in who you are and what your country stands for, you don't fall for cheap words. You don't backpedal. You don't make deals just to say you made a deal. You make winning deals because you walk in knowing the value you bring. And more importantly, you're not afraid to walk away. Strong deals require clarity, they require courage, they require a refusal to be manipulated, and most of all, they require a mind that cannot be swayed by pressure or praise. That's what makes the difference. And not how good you look at the podium, but how strong your thinking is behind closed doors. That's the kind of mind that builds nations, not just headlines. Spiritual confidence creates leverage. When you know who you are, you walk into any room already holding the advantage. You don't have to fake it. You don't have to overcompensate. You're not scrambling to prove anything because your presence is the proof. That kind of confidence doesn't come from titles or applause. It comes from within. It's built in silence, tested in storms, and revealed when pressure hits. And when you carry that kind of presence, people feel it, they sense it, they back up because they know they're dealing with someone who won't bend. This is what most so-called leaders never understand. They think power comes from position, from being elected or celebrated. But true power, real leverage comes from identity. It comes from being spiritually anchored, from knowing what you believe and why it can't be bought. When your spirit is unshaken, your negotiations are unshakable. You don't need to raise your voice. You don't need to beg. You sit at the table, calm, firm, and completely detached from their approval. Obama never had that. He was always reaching, always adjusting, always trying to make sure people were comfortable. He didn't lead with conviction. He led with caution. And cautious leadership invites compromise. It opens the door to manipulation. When you don't know who you are, someone else will write your terms. But when you do know, when you're spiritually solid, you write the terms, and they either accept or walk away. This is how you win without aggression. This is how you dominate without even raising your hand. It's not arrogance, it's alignment. You've got your values, your calling, your mission locked in. And when that happens, every deal you touch shifts in your favor because you're no longer negotiating from need. You're negotiating from strength. Compromise without clarity is surrender. People like to dress it up, call it diplomacy, call it progress, but When you compromise without knowing exactly what you stand for, you're just giving up ground in disguise. They tell you to meet in the middle to keep everyone happy. But if you don't have a firm foundation, the middle becomes a moving target. And that's what's been happening for years. Leaders making deals, signing agreements, shaking hands with people who laugh behind their backs, all because they didn't have the clarity to say, this is who we are, this is where we stand, and we don't move. Without clarity, you'll trade what's priceless for what's temporary. And that's exactly what we saw under Obama. He walked into rooms thinking his smooth words and soft tone would bring peace. But peace doesn't come from appeasement. Peace comes from strength. You don't inspire respect by folding. You don't protect your nation by handing over your leverage. And you certainly don't lead by giving more than you're getting just to appear reasonable. Clarity is power. It's knowing your values, your goals, your limits. When you have that, compromise becomes strategy, not surrender. You don't compromise your core. You negotiate the edges. That's how winners operate. That's how strong leaders win. You don't move your position to please the room. You hold your ground and force the room to move around you. The world doesn't need more agreeable politicians. It needs unshakable vision. If your vision is cloudy, your compromise will cost you everything. But when your vision is sharp, your message is consistent, and your values are immovable, you become the immovable force. And that's when the game changes. Because now you're not reacting, you're leading on your terms with clarity and no apologies. Past leadership gave away power. They didn't lose it. They handed it over voluntarily, casually, as if it meant nothing. And they did it because they didn't understand what they were holding. They didn't see the value of American strength, the weight of American leverage, or the responsibility of American leadership. They were more concerned with being accepted by the global elite than protecting the people who put them in office. And the one who did it most, Obama, he walked into the White House with a smile and walked out having diminished everything that made this nation great. He believed in sharing power and apologizing for it, in shrinking America down to be fair to everyone else. But here's the truth. Power is not something you share to gain approval. It's something you steward to protect your people. And when you give it away to people who hate your success, you're not being fair, you're being foolish. The world doesn't respect weakness. They don't admire humility wrapped in confusion. They respect strength, confidence, authority, trade deals, foreign policy, military decisions, one after the other handed over. And why? Because the leadership at the time didn't believe we deserved to win. They thought winning was selfish. They thought being strong was offensive. And so they negotiated like victims. They made decisions based on fear, guilt, and the need to be liked. That's how you lose a country. We don't gain peace by giving away power. We gain it by owning it, by walking into every room knowing we belong there. Power is not the problem. Weak leadership is. And when leaders no longer believe in the value of their own nation, they start making deals that benefit everyone but the people they were called to serve. That's betrayal. Plain and simple. You can't build strength on apologies. That's the fastest way to lose the respect of your allies and the fear of your enemies. Every time a leader stands up and says, I'm sorry for being strong, they're not showing grace, they're showing weakness, and weakness invites exploitation. Obama made it a habit. He traveled the world apologizing for America, for our history, our power, our success. He bowed, he apologized, he caved, and while he was busy saying sorry, other countries were laughing, taking what they could, knowing he wouldn't push back. Strength doesn't apologize for existing. It doesn't shrink so others feel comfortable. A true leadership stands firm and makes no excuses for being effective, dominant, or blessed. You don't see a lion apologizing for being at the top of the food chain. You don't see champions apologizing for winning. That's because they know who they are. They understand that greatness comes with responsibility, not guilt. When you start apologizing for your strength, you begin to dilute it. You start second-guessing your decisions. You let emotional pressure override strategic thinking. You try to make everyone happy, and in the process, you make your own people vulnerable. That's not compassion. That's cowardice dressed up as diplomacy. Strong nations don't apologize for being strong. They lead with it. They protect with it. They negotiate from it. And the moment a leader puts shame on their own country's greatness, they open the door for that greatness to be stolen. That's what happened for 8 years. Apologies didn't earn us peace. They earned us betrayal, imbalance, and disrespect on the world stage. If you want to build a future that lasts, you build it on strength, you build it on truth, and you never apologize for winning. Not ever. True vision transcends emotion. That's the difference between a leader and a performer. A leader sees where things need to go even when the crowd doesn't. The performer plays to the emotions of the moment, trying to win favor, trying to get applause. But emotion is unstable. It changes day to day, minute to minute. And when you base decisions on emotion, you're building on sand. That's how you lose direction. That's how you get swept up in what feels good instead of what's right. Obama governed emotionally. He let feelings dictate policy. He wanted to look compassionate, inclusive, understanding, and in doing so, he let America fall behind. He couldn't see the long game because he was too focused on the moment, and the moment is always filled with noise. Polls, protests, headlines, but a real leader doesn't chase noise. A real leader sees above. Vision is what separates temporary popularity from lasting impact. It's not swayed by pressure or opinion. It holds course even when the world is yelling, because vision is about where you're going, not how you feel today. And sometimes doing what's necessary doesn't feel good. Sometimes you have to make decisions that upset people in the short term so you can win in the long term. That's leadership. That's courage. When you're ruled by emotion, you end up making decisions just to ease the tension. But when you're ruled by vision, you understand that not every battle is about comfort. Some are about destiny. You keep your eyes forward, your voice steady, and your decisions firm. And when others panic, you stay clear, because the goal isn't to feel good. The goal is to win, to secure the future, and to lead with clarity that emotion can't touch. The power of silence in strategy is one of the most underestimated forces in leadership. Everyone wants to talk, to explain, to defend, but silence, when used correctly, is a weapon. It creates space, it creates tension, and in that tension, truth rises. When you're not always reacting, not always explaining yourself, you force others to reveal themselves. You give your enemies just enough rope to hang themselves. Because in silence, people show their cards. Obama never understood that. He filled every room with speeches, apologies, endless talk that meant nothing. While he was speaking, others were strategizing. While he was explaining, they were moving. He gave away his position before he even sat down. That's not power. That's insecurity disguised as diplomacy. Real strength doesn't need to speak all the time. It doesn't need to prove anything. It just sits, watches, and waits for the right moment. When you hold your silence, you hold your ground. You don't let them bait you. You don't jump into their emotional traps. You don't respond just to respond. And that drives them crazy because they can't control what they can't predict. Silence breaks patterns. It interrupts their rhythm. And in that stillness, you take control. The loudest voice in the room isn't always the strongest. And many times it's the most afraid. But the one who can stay calm, measured, and still, that's the one who owns the room. That's the one who makes the rules, because silence isn't absence, it's presence magnified. It says, I'm not desperate, I'm not chasing, I'm not reacting, I'm watching, calculating, and when I move, it will be decisive. Strategic silence creates fear, and fear creates leverage. And in the game of power, leverage is everything. Attachment to approval is bondage. The moment you start needing people to like you, you give them power over you. You become their servant, not their leader. Your decisions stop being about what's right and start being about what's popular. And once that happens, you're no longer operating from purpose. You're performing for applause. That's what keeps so many leaders weak. They're addicted to approval. They live for the headlines, the likes, the cheers. But when the crowd stops cheering, and they always do, those leaders crumble. Obama craved approval. He shaped entire policies around it. He didn't want to lead from conviction. He wanted to be accepted, especially on the world stage. He traded strength for applause, sovereignty for smiles, and he became trapped. The media propped him up, but only because he gave them what they wanted. Weakness disguised as virtue. That's bondage, quiet, deceptive bondage. Real freedom is when you can walk into a room and not care if they love you, hate you, cheer for you, or boo you, because you're not moved by it. You're anchored. You're grounded in purpose. You know why you're there. And that kind of presence is rare. That's power. That's leadership. When you no longer need approval, you become immune to manipulation. People can't guilt you. They can't flatter you. They can't trap you with emotional games. You operate from vision, not validation. And when they realize you can't be controlled by their applause, they start to respect you, even fear you, because you're free. And a free man, a free leader is unstoppable. He doesn't bow, he doesn't beg, he decides, he moves, and the world adjusts. That's what it means to be truly powerful, to live above their approval and beyond their control. You were never made to beg for approval. You were made to walk in authority. The world doesn't shift when you're liked. It shifts when you stand. You don't lead by asking permission. You lead by knowing who you are, what you believe, and refusing to bend. That's where the power is. That's where the future is shaped. The weakness of the past, the apologies, the compromises, the handouts disguised as diplomacy, that era is over. We don't rise by retreating. We rise by returning to strength, to clarity, to purpose. And that requires a detachment from the noise, the applause, the fake praise of people who would rather see you weak than successful. If you want to reclaim your power in life, in business, in nation, detach from the lie that you need to be accepted. You don't. What you need is vision, conviction, and the courage to walk away from anything that insults your purpose. We don't serve the world by being small. We serve it by being immovable. And when you lead from that place, when you are unshaken by emotion, unmoved by pressure, untouched by the need to please, you don't just make deals, you change the world.